We are your hosts, Manveer
And Ruth.
and for tonight's show, our lovely guest is...
Dr. Trevor Adams.
Welcome to the show, Trevor, or shall I call you Dr. Trevor?
However you want to.
I'll call you Dr. Trevor, as I
Okay.
feel like that's much more respectful.
That's okay. Thank you.
So, Dr. Trevor, could you introduce yourself to our listeners?
Okay, I'm Dr. Trevor Adams. I'm also a pastor, so some people may refer to me as Pastor Trevor Adams. Live in Luton. I lecture. So one of the things that I do, I lecture. I mentor young people in terms of enable them to raise their aspirations and their attainment. I also mentor adults as well who have decided that they wanted to go back into formal education and go on to university. I'm also involved in another different areas such as mental health, areas such as community development, community regeneration, and just to name a few.
That sounds interesting. Sounds like you have many hats that you wear.
Yeah, and it goes back to my experience of education, why I have so many hats.
Yeah, that sounds nice. Can you tell us a bit about so you talked about your roles, different roles. Can you go a bit more into your achievements that you've had so far?
My achievements, okay. I don't know if you call them achievements, but at school, when I left school with probably today's equivalent of 2 GCSEs, grade Cs. Okay. And then I went to sixth form college, and I stayed at sixth form college for 3 years, as opposed to 2 years, because the first year was to retake qualifications that I didn't get. And I left college with 1 A-level law and about 5 equivalent of GCSEs. But I didn't go to university until I was about 46. That's when I went to university. And traditionally, it is first degree, master's, and then doctorate. But when I went to university, I went straight on to doing a doctorate. And the reason why was because the university recognized the knowledge that I gained from working within the community, the knowledge that I gained in life was very, very wide and very, very substantial. Because I'd set up a charity probably 1995 with running different projects. Back in that time, I received a mayor's award for my contribution to Luton. When the riots broke out on the Marsh Farm estate, the civil disturbance broke out on Marsh Farm estate, we had just moved on to the estate. And then there was opportunity for regeneration. So I was, like Montel, one of the originals, involved in, first of all, arguing why the funding should come to Marsh Farm. And then secondly, setting up a project called Achievers, which was about raising the attainment of young people who lived on the Marsh Farm estate. Because the local school, Limana, at the time, the pass rate for kids was in the region of 24%.
Wow.
So only 24% of the kids that were attending the school was getting 5 or more GCSEs, because the school was in special measures. Thankfully, things have changed. I've also set up a project around mental health in the Black community, project around domestic violence, addressing domestic abuse, project working with families, supporting families with young children as part of the Sure Start 0 to 5 initiative. There was also, back in the 1990s, 2000, I'd set up a project locally called Black Boys Can, because Black boys, especially Caribbean boys in the education system, were not performing to their level. So set up the Black Boys Can, going into schools, working with Black boys within a community. And the list goes on and on and on and on.
That's definitely an achievement.
That is
More than
yeah.
one achievement. Even.
That is a lot of things, and you're probably still doing projects right now as well as we're speaking, innit?
Not as much, apart from trying to nurture young people like yourselves to pass on the skills and knowledge to the next generation. But yes, there's still a number of projects that I'm involved in.
Yeah. That's interesting about Lee Manor, because I myself have been to Lee Manor as well.
Yes.
And there are a lot of bright people when I was there, and a lot of people, you could say that they had talent within them. They had the ability to be able to be very clever, very smart and educated, but there were other factors around that which kind of stopped them.
Yes.
And it's very important for you individuals like yourself to have these projects within the education system. And the Black Boys Can one, that really sounds interesting as well. Could you explain that for me a little bit? It's not that obviously Black Boys Can, where you said there was a rate in which young black boys weren't getting weren't achieving the right grades in education.
Yes.
Could you explain in terms of that project as well? Because that sounds very interesting to me.
Yeah, I will come back to that. But just want to pick up your point with regards to Lee Manor. Things have changed with Lee Manor, and we're looking to do some stuff with Lee Manor around transformation, bringing community to work with the school. So that is in the pipeline. But in terms of black boys, this goes back to probably the 1950s, 1960s.
Wow.
Okay. I was part of the education system. So I came into the education system 1968. And many of us who came from overseas, we were put into the education system. And we, although we were very, very bright, we were put onto lower exam routes. Yes. So the maximum we could get would be a C, because you would have done the GCSEs. Back in my day, it was GCE, O-level, which was a higher level, and CSEs, which was a lower level. So the O-level had letters A, B, C, D, E. A, of course, was a brilliant pass. C was average. But on the lower paper, you had numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 was equivalent to a C. All right. So for your generation, what they've done is to combine the GCE and the CSE and call it GCSEs. Okay. All right. And now, before it was letters, so A star A, now it's numbers. All right. So things have gone around in full circle. So there's recognition nationally that black boys in particular weren't getting the grades that they could get. And as you rightly said, with young people, they have the intelligence, have the knowledge, have the skills. And over the years, there's been identified a number of issues why this hasn't worked. 1, the curriculum. 2, teachers' expectations, low teachers' expectations. Teachers have low expectations of the boys. 3, laddish behavior, meaning that it's not cool to be seen as bright and intelligent. That's one factor. And the other factor really is the structural, institutional racism that is there within society.
Definitely, I think it even does affect people now till this day as well. Like, we do see institutional racism, not just in schools, but within organizations. And with those types of projects, we can actually uncover what is actually happening within those organizations. With Attentive, we have worked with the police, and we've uncovered a lot of things that maybe to the public eye nobody would really know. And it doesn't mean these organizations are bad organizations. It just means that they've lived those kind of things, and because they've lived it consistently, they think it's normal.
Yes.
And it's just about normalizing respectful behavior within organizations, and achieving excellence and including everyone around.
Absolutely.
And that's just that type of work. If I wasn't attentive, I wouldn't really have understood. But to just understand that you're talking about the schools and in terms of how it doesn't serve the black students correctly, or
Yes.
it doesn't serve everyone else correctly,
Yeah.
regardless of where they live, regardless of their color, what they believe in.
Mm-hmm.
It just shows that these types of things does create change.
You're right. They do create change, and I'm aware of the fantastic work that yourself, Montel, has done with Attentive. And guys, please continue doing such great work. I think it's recognizing that you're right. The deeper issues. During the period of time that I was at school, they used to have special schools. And these schools were called schools for the educationally subnormal.
Oh.
Can you imagine? ESN. Now we have SEN, but at that time it was ESN. Schools for the educationally subnormal. All right? I think they were probably set up, if my memory serves me right, probably between 1944 and 1948. Those schools were actually called schools for the educationally subnormal. And there was a guy called Bernard Code, guy from Grenada who was working in the UK, working in London. And he recognized that the black kids in the population was just a tiny fraction. But in the schools for the educationally subnormal, they were overrepresented.
Oh my God.
Yes, overrepresented. So he wrote a book in the 70s to alert parents to what was actually happening. And the title of his book was called How the British Education System Makes the West Indian Child or the Caribbean Child Educationally Subnormal. This was in the 1970s.
Wow.
He's still alive. And he's still having a conversation to identify that and to highlight that he wrote this book in the 1970s, yet 2024, we're still faced with similar issues. But I think it is about uncovering, and so young people like yourselves becoming aware of this is part of the history, and for yourselves to be able to initiate the changes. So you'll be a great teacher.
That's crazy. I didn't know that was a thing. I mean, I could have imagined. It doesn't sound surprising, but it is very crazy when you think.
I think it's a big gap. It's a big gap because it's not taught. The history is not taught. But please don't take my word for it. Go and do your research.
Yeah.
And in fact, I was at the British Library last week for this exhibition, 500 Years of Black British Music. And there was a copy of Bernard Code's book there on exhibition. Yes.
That's interesting. That's nice. Can you tell us who was your greatest influence growing up?
Combination. It has to be a combination.
It's always a combination.
Yeah. First of all, my grandmother. I lived with my grandmother from 6 months to 7 years. So my grandmother laid that foundation. By the time I was 3, I was able to read. So by the time I started school in Guyana, I was way advanced. When I came to England, my education was pushed back. But my grandmother instilled in me the importance of reading, the importance of school and education. So she instilled that in me. So that my grandmother was the first person. And then the second person was my father. My father, in his 80s, he still is a science teacher. He still teaches science in his 80s. He was also inspirational because as children, one of our rooms was a study. So that was a study. So, 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom, one room was a study. And in that room, we weren't allowed to go into the room unless we got permission. So he had all of his scientific equipment, his microscope, all the different slides to watch on the microscope. And he used to get us to study for ourselves. So he would set us tasks to do, and then we would have to go and do the tasks, passages to read, maths to do, and mark it ourselves because the answers was at the back of the book. So one of the things he taught us was how to study independently, not depend on anyone. So he was a inspiration. But also my mum. My mum was also an inspiration in terms of her resilience and staying focused. Mum had to raise three of us by herself, and very, very strong woman. Showed us determination. Showed us that we can do it. We can achieve, irrespective of our situation and our circumstances. And my father-in-law, I think he went to university in his 70s for the first time. So I thought, you know what, this is absolutely fantastic. And he also encouraged me to study as well.
Interesting. That's a combination I haven't heard so far. So it's very interesting to see this.
It's a plethora of gratitude, but in a good way, because I feel like learning so many things from different people, oftentimes, in general, we always take those things for granted.
Yeah.
And it is good to take inspiration from everyone.
Absolutely.
Even despite having flaws, because every human being, we all have flaws.
Yeah. Yes.
But finding out the good parts and kind of just like absorbing them and taking them in feels very good. And
can I just add to that?
Yeah.
Because remember what I said, I did badly at school. But my teachers also inspired me because of the fact I didn't get the education that I thought I would get, and my parents thought I would get. So that taught me to take responsibility for my learning. Hence the reason why I'm just constantly learning from anyone and everyone.
Definitely. Would you say that's one of the biggest challenges you faced in terms of your education, or what is the biggest challenge you faced within your scope of learning?
The biggest challenge is not have enough time to read everything. I just love to read. I've got so many books that I've read, books I haven't read. And even coming out today, I was just thinking that I need to get the PDF files on my books and then listen to the audio. But it's just absorbing so much information there. I'm wanting to read and knowing you cannot read everything all at once. That's my biggest frustration.
Does that haunt your mind?
It does because I see a book. I mean, when I was younger, I was just addicted to books. I would go to a secondhand bookshop, I was like, wow, this is absolutely amazing. And I would buy books. When I went on holiday, if my wife would go and she'll go shopping, and I would just go look for a bookshop. I'll buy a book, and but yeah, it's just really not enough time to read.
Yeah, understandably so. Just to stay on reading a little bit, what tips would you give on someone who is trying to get into reading, or someone who's fallen off reading to get back into reading?
This sounds like a personal question. Yeah? It sounds like a personal question.
I don't want to put it as a personal question.
All right, okay. Okay. Well, find the thing that you're passionate about. I mean, the key thing is learning. Be a learner. That's the first thing. Be a learner. And then find something that you're passionate about. And then learn it from different aspects. So read something that you are passionate about first and foremost. You know, we talked about education, and for me, the challenge with the education system is the fact it does not start off with what you are interested in. It starts off, well, this is the curriculum. Curriculum means life course. This is the way we're going to take you down. And many young people are passionate about so many things. So if I mention a young boy is interested in football, a girl who's interested in football, they have that interest already. So I said, well, actually go and read up on the successful footballers. Read up on the managers, because by reading, you will understand what they did. And you will also understand what it is that a manager is looking for. Success always leaves a clue. Remember that. Success always leaves a clue, right? Success always leaves a clue. And there's so many clues out there in terms of success. It's there. It's in the books. But you've got to pick up the book and read it. But whatever it is that you are interested in, just start to read up on it. And there is a book about almost everything.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So read up on it. And get the books with the big print, because sometimes small print can put you off.
Yeah, honestly, there's small prints and my eyes. First of all, I can't see naturally. Like I'm struggling, and then I see the small print, and I'm like, oh.
Yeah, find something you're passionate about. Find something you are passionate about, and then go for it. Right? It doesn't matter if it's something that you're not studying, but something that you are interested in, and then just start to read that. Because the brain will connect it with, if you're studying, if you start to read something that you are interested in, the brain will connect it, will make the connections.
True.
That's interesting. What would be your favorite genre of reading?
Well, I probably true life stories, people's life stories. I find it very, very interesting. So, for example, I was interested to find more about Nelson Mandela. So his book, Marcus Rashford, footballer, produced a book, and I was quite interested as to why has this guy, was led up to his success. Remember what I said: success always leaves a clue.
Yeah.
So it's there.
Such a good quote.
So Elon Musk, yes, the richest man in the world, or Jeff Bezos, second richest man, is arguable depending who it is. But their success is a clue. If they've authored a book, it's there. I tell you what, in the 80s, I read a book by Bill Gates. It's called The Road Ahead. In the 80s. And in that book, he was just setting out his vision. And he said that there will be one gadget in the house that will control everything. This is in the 80s. One gadget in the house, your phone, your telephone, signals, etc., etc. And you will have a card the size of a bank card. It will have everything on it. This was in the 1980s. And the reason why I read it was because I thought, what is the richest man in the world thinking at the time? Richest man in the world. What is the richest man in the world thinking? All right. And I read up on what he was saying, and I tell you what, he was correct. He shaped the world in terms of his thinking. So reading becomes very, very important. Success always leaves a clue.
Wow.
Yeah, that was very powerful.
Now I'm gonna start reading the 10 to 20 books that I have laid in my shelf.
Honestly,
Yeah.
I've got such a big pile. I've got boxes and boxes that I've read, but there's such a big pile that I still need to go through.
That's okay.
And it's just like, I love reading. I feel like once you do love it, it's very easy to get into it. But once you fall out of it, going back into it is a big, big struggle.
Well, ask yourself, what do you want to know? Ask yourself, what do you want to know about the life in the world?
I really like true life stories because they talk about the journey.
Yes.
And when I used to read books about footballers, football managers, I'll go straight to the glory parts. So like where they've won trophies, where they've won accolades and everything else.
Right.
But then I was like, no, that's not the right way of going about it.
Right.
You want to see how they surpassed their challenges, how they got to where they are, how they dealt with frustrations within their path. And it's inspiring to read, whether you like them or not. Anyone who writes a book, they'll give you ideas in which you can take them on personally and be a better version of yourself.
Yes, absolutely. And it doesn't matter what field it is, doesn't matter what it is. Success leaves a clue. It's there. It's there.
Yeah.
So wherever you are in your life, you might think, okay, I'm feeling a bit stuck. Get a book and read. Read how did that person get over that particular stage.
That's a really good one. Maybe when I make it out of my reading stuff, I'll give you guys tips on how to make it out as well. Yeah. But
so moving on, we'll be talking more about mentoring and your mentoring journey. So for my first question is, how did you get into mentoring and what are the main pathways to mentoring?
I think how I got into mentoring was recognizing that where I had got to in my life, someone else had mentored me. It might not have been called mentor. I remember my uncle, and I remember him always used to pass by our house and always used to try and find out how we're doing. But I remember when I was 18, he took me to his workplace, and he worked at the air traffic control place in West Drayton. So this is a place where you can see all the planes on the screen. and this was back in the late 70s, and of course he was into computers, so he had a massive room like this size, even bigger, with those massive computers. And I recognized that he had helped me on that journey. And other people along the way had helped me on the journey. And I then recognized that actually it's about giving back. How do I give back to the next generation? How do I contribute to the next generation? Because it wasn't just simply about me receiving and getting to a particular place in life. That means nothing unless I'm able to pass on to the next generation. So I've had fantastic people who've come alongside of me and walked with me, and I saw the benefits of it. And I thought, you know what, we often blame young people, but if we, instead of blaming, was to walk alongside a young person. We talk about young people get involved in gangs, but instead of blaming them, if we was to say, well, actually, come and walk with me, or I'll walk with you, I will show you what is possible in your life, then they wouldn't get there. So again, what I saw, the fact that society had changed, and that support for young people just wasn't there. And so for me, it was, how can I give back? But experience such a joy in giving back, mentoring young people.
That's nice. That's interesting. You did say that you experienced a joy in mentoring young people.
Mm-hmm.
Leading on to that, what are your favorite things about mentoring?
Seeing a person grow, seeing a person develop, seeing a person that school said, you know, this person, because when I used to work in school, I used to get the kids who were the badly behaved, right? The so-called badly behaved. And to see those young people go on this journey of being transformed, and seeing them, I was on the way to London last week, and a young man met at the train station was one of the boys that I work with.
Oh.
And to sort of see him growing up, and so for me, it's that seeing the young person go through that transformation and becoming whom that they know that they can become. My starting point, as I said, when I used to work in school, I used to get a group of young people, and I used to work with boys and girls, but separately, separate groups for boys, separate groups for girls. And so the first question I would ask them is, why are you here? And they'll look at each other and they'll say, well, because of our behavior, sir. Because they know who's in the group. So they would say, because of our behavior. Then I would say to them, well, why do you think I'm here? And they would say to me, it's because of our behavior, sir. I said, really? Really? What is it about your behavior? And then they will start to have tell me, I've been talking back to the teacher, I've been doing this, I've been doing that, I've been doing this, been doing that. And my response to that is, oh, okay, I must be in the wrong group. Because I don't work with young people, I don't work with children who are badly behaved. And their face kind of look at me in a very strange way, so then why are you here? And so what I say to them is this, let me tell you, I don't work with kids, young people who are badly behaved. I work with geniuses who do not know their geniuses, and because they don't know their geniuses, they then mess around. I'm here to bring out the genius in you. That's why I'm here, to bring out the genius in you. And they kind of look at me strange, they kind of look at each other. Yes, there's a genius in you. Education comes from the Latin word educare, which means to draw out. Draw out, educe, to draw out, not to put in. This is the reason why I was asking you before we started, what is it you want to be? Because once I know what it is you want to be, then the role of the teacher, the role of the mentor is to help you to draw that out. Each one of us, we're born with gifts. Each one of us, we're born with a particular interest. And if that becomes our starting point, then we can grow. Because one, you are already interested in something. So if I know what you're interested in, I can teach you maths, English, science, French, German, whatever. because you already have that interest, and the human brain is designed to learn, right? So going back to your question, what really excites me is to see somebody who class or school says, this person is not working to their potential, or this person has challenging behavior, and then to see them transform. And then years afterwards, on the street, on the train, on the bus, and see that person, and to see their lives transform, and they say, thank you, you believed in me. And every young person just needs at least one person to believe in them.
Definitely, I definitely agree with that. I think I've had a lot of like teachers that were like mentors to me. I don't think if I had those mentors around me, even if they weren't like specifically as mentors, they were just like teachers of subjects.
Yes.
They still had a very big impact on my life.
Yes.
Because when you have someone that believes in you, it pushes you in such a way that you're like, no matter what happens, I can get through this because this person believes in me. And one thing I often find very disappointing is when, like you were talking about those young people, the proclaimed bad kids.
Yes.
I find it very disappointing that they themselves think they are bad. And that's very like heartbreaking to hear that, because they've been taught that their bad behaviors, they can't change, blah, 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 this and that. And one thing that I still do not like to school about this day is that we have a lot of comparisons.
Yes.
We have a lot of comparisons that like this student is going to be as smart or this student has very challenging behavior, rather than trying to make assumptions, rather than trying to work with them, than to make assumptions. I feel like it's better to maybe get the best out of them. And in a way that it doesn't label them straight away, because when we're younger, when we feel like we're being labelled, we hold on to that.
That's right.
And it's such a heartbreaking thing to hear from you that those kids feel like they are bad kids.
Yeah. They feel like they're a problem.
Yeah.
They feel that they are a problem because the way that we relate to them makes them feel that they are a problem. And because they feel that they're a problem, what we tend to do with a problem, we tend to get rid of it. And so we exclude them. And that contributes to the way that they see that they are a problem. As I said, my starting point is that every child is born with a gift. By the age of 2, a child without going to any school, by the age of 2, they're able to speak a language. By the age of 2, without going to school, without going to college, without going to university. Us as adults, if we try to learn a language now, we'll find it challenging. But yet, a child who's only been on the planet for 2 years, able to pick up a language in 2 years. And so it shows the enormity, the potential of every single child.
100%. Couldn't agree more. I'm so mind blown. I'm speechless. Just to move on, we talked about the good things of being a mentor, but what about the challenges that you've had, and how did you face those challenges?
The challenges is that where I've had a situation where the parents don't get it.
Yeah.
Parents don't get it, because when I work with young people, I try to work with parents and the young person, and I can see actually it's not the young person, it's actually the parents. That becomes quite frustrating because there isn't much that I can do. Or a situation whereby a youth has been so deeply wounded, and everyone expects a miracle to happen overnight. And instead of recognizing that it takes some time and there may be other complicated, complex issues that the young person may not have said or disclosed. So it takes a bit of time. So people's expectation that this young person should change overnight, that frustrates me. And likewise, parents creating blockages for the young person to not able to grow, or I might do some work and the parents undo it. All right. So my approach is I don't work with the individual on a one-to-one, especially a young person, youth on a one-to-one. work with the family, so that at the same time, parents can also be part of that change process. But those are the two areas that really, really frustrates me.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I mean, at that point, you can't do much, even if you build that established relationship, because parents are like the first wall.
Yeah.
And it's not that you have to face that wall, it's that if you can communicate with parents very well and you can come to a collective understanding, it becomes much easier. So the discussion for this part of the show is the discussion on the EDL riots that have been happening in the last few weeks in our country. So in terms of context, the EDL riots have happened due to the fatal stabbing of 3 young girls at a dance class in Southport, England, which has caused the worst unrest the UK has ever seen in over a decade. And the violence across England and Northern Ireland is driven by misinformation, which we've seen through the news, in where they've created the idea that, it must have been a Muslim, when the killer's name could not be revealed due to
His age.
And the laws behind revealing young offenders. And it's created a misinformation that it meant that people from all around England, they've created chaos in which they've gone into shops, they've broken things, and they've created distress among communities.
Yeah.
So in terms of this whole situation, how do you feel about it?
Well, first of all, I think we should not forget that there have been these girls who've lost their life.
Definitely.
And parents and families who are going through a very, very painful time, grieving over a tremendous loss. In all the political upheaval and all the rioting on the streets, I think we've got to put things into that particular context. We're talking about girls who've lost their lives and talking about parents and families who are hurting deeply. In terms of what we've seen on the streets, it's nothing new. It's nothing new. It's part of the history within Britain. You go back in history, you would see that there have been these riots. But what I am seeing, possibly for the first time, is communities coming together and saying, we don't want this in our neighborhood, we don't want this. This is not what we want for our community. That is what I find really, really fascinating. People standing together, people are saying that, let's do. In fact, I think I saw today, a meeting around calling artists together to put on a performance, come together to do an event. And that's quite interesting because in the 1970s, there was a massive anti-racist event. Communities coming together, artists coming together and putting on a massive event. For me, it's about looking at the truth. What you said, there was disinformation pass. Looking at the truth and how can we reconcile with each other around what are the deeper issues. Because clearly there are deeper issues that is there. And those issues have been festering for quite some time. And also looking at why was it so easy to trigger off the situation like this. Because there are sections of our community who believe that they have been sidelined, that people coming from overseas, taking their jobs, taking their housing, etc., etc., etc. And unfortunately, politicians have always spanned that in terms of their own interests, as opposed to the interests of their community. It's always been about their own interests. For some politicians, that's not every politician is like that. But the rhetorics that we've seen in the news over the last year and before then was part of that. that thing that just ignited, caused that explosion. But as I said, the positive things are people coming together, communities standing together, communities saying we want love, not hate in our community, and that's absolutely amazing.
Definitely agree with you. One thing that also stood out to me is that the first time I'm seeing everyone of every community come together and being like, we will stand together and we'll drive racism out.
Yes.
And beforehand, it was more like, because I've seen through some of the documentaries of the East End communities of the Bengalis, the Sikh community in Southall,
Yes.
and other communities all around, in which they have been treated in the late 60s and the 70s
Yeah.
when they came to this country. And it's really horrifying to see.
Yes.
But to witness that all of our communities have come together, and that the community events that we have as well, they matter very much to ignite that togetherness. It was very refreshing to see after seeing all of these riots happening across the country. Well, what do you think, Ruth?
I knew you were going to come on to me. I agree with what you said, especially people coming together, people protecting the mosque, different areas, people chasing out the rioters, which is really funny to me. But then again, it's not a funny situation, guys. It's a very serious situation. But at the same time, it wasn't really surprising seeing people feeling like they've been sidelined. I think rightfully, I don't want to say rightfully so, but at the same time, we're all humans. We all have these emotions. It's just like when you have a sibling and you feel like your mum prioritizes your sibling more, of course you're going to feel resentment for that sibling, even your mum or your parent, I don't know. And that can come out in different ways. And I think that's what's coming out. But I also feel like because of misinformation, there are so many people that are out there rioting that don't know the core truth, that are doing just whatever they saw on social media and going off that and just spreading that around, which is really bad. But like you said, we should really go back to the core truth. And they did reveal the name of the young boy that killed
I don't remember the name now, but he's a 17-year-old. We don't have to.
Yes.
But my question for both of you now is, how do you think social media has played a good part and also a negative part? Because I feel like in this situation, it goes both ways.
Yeah, I think, can I just pick up the point that Ruth made in terms of siblings and one being favored by parents? I think sometimes when we don't have that maturity, we can think that one sibling is favored over another, until we begin to recognize that actually the parents have made a major investment in you, but you just haven't really kind of noticed. But I think going back to looking at the media, I mean, the media has never been, especially social media, has never been as powerful as it is now in history.
Yeah.
And you get information at just a tip of your finger. Information is there, massive amounts of information. The social media has played a role in terms of stoking the fire, because false information has been communicated. And we've also, though, on the opposite side of the coin, seen where social media has been used to rally people together for a good cause. So there's that kind of mixed reality that social media now and the media, that it can be a force for good and it can be a force for evil. I think the Daily Mail online, was in the news today because they had featured, I think it was an Asian young man who had fought off an attacker in London. And the way they put the headline, it made it seem as if it was the young man who was the attacker. I think there's some complaints that has gone into the Mail about that. So the media have always had power and influence. But I think we just need to be very critical of when we get information. And I've got to say this is what university is all about. Helping you to think critically rather than accepting information that is given to you. We need to train young people so that they can discern. They've got the tools to know when something, they can test out something to see if it's fact or if it's fiction.
Yeah, one of the most surprising things I've seen, which disappointed me, was seeing young people in the riots as well. That was another thing. I did expect that there would be, not expect, but obviously with chaos like that, you would expect people to be in later ages. But in terms of young people, it was kind of surprising to see them involved. But at the same time, you could think about this is what they've learned and this is what they've kind of understood, and therefore this is how they're going about things. So at the same time, that's just kind of how it is. But it wasn't good to see young people there.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with young people is that young people can be influenced, And from what I saw, there were young people there, some young people who were smashing into a shop.
Yeah.
So they weren't kind of, protesting. They were there smashing up shops.
Yeah.
But I saw some very young people, children, and that was disappointing. That was really, really disappointing. And to a certain extent, if those young people are ignored, left their own devices, if they don't have anywhere where they can be supported and encouraged, then they can easily become influenced by the wrong section. So this work you guys are doing in Attentive, I think, is absolutely brilliant because it gives young people an outlet that's in a positive way.
Definitely. I think in terms of the events that we've had, the Attentive event where we were celebrating Luton, there's a common thing about what is there to celebrate within Luton. Well, it's just an empty town with nothing around. But having those moments really shape how you feel about the town. And having those types of events, I think it comes down to identity. How you identify yourself, how you identify others, how you identify your communities is a very important thing. And the power that we have and we don't know, especially young people, is that we have the opportunity to create those identities. Because if we say every city or town has its unique things, they were all man-made.
Yes.
They were all made by man and they were all created for a specific reason. And why don't we take the opportunity to create an identity in which we can include everyone and we can include everything? I mean, aside from politics, because politics is another whole thing. But with people like, why should we celebrate this? It's important to celebrate it because it creates something in your mind which generates something positive about it. And that's what is good about the community events. And the interesting thing is that it's took something as catastrophic to this level to bring communities together.
Yes.
Otherwise, we usually have little skirmishes within our communities, like Indians and Pakistanis, and then all Desi communities together. I mean, in your situations, it might be a little bit different, but we have little skirmishes. But to find that everyone's now united, it makes us much more stronger.
Yeah, you're right. And I think part of that, I believe, is the fact that, unlike many areas, Luton we've got our 2040 vision. We are a town with a vision. And that vision is about everyone being able to thrive. So whether you're young, whether you're old, irrespective of your ethnicity, we're working to create a town where everyone can have that opportunity. And I remember when Boris Johnson was Prime Minister, was talking about leveling up, right? One of the things which he said, which kind of stuck in my mind, he said, up and down the country, we are not short of talent. So those young people, we saw there in the riots, they have talents. Yeah. But what they don't have is opportunity. So I think, one of the lessons that has to come out of the situation is looking at, is the truth. What are the opportunities that are available or not available for young people, certain groups of young people? If we've closed down the youth clubs, what is there for young people to do? And so that, I feel, should be part of that truth and reconciliation, where we're not afraid to ask those difficult questions, those challenging questions, but we do it respectfully. It's a bit like, and I was talking about this on Saturday, I said it's a bit like what happened in South Africa, where you had the truth and reconciliation. The nation recognized that after apartheid, that there needed to be a way for everyone to go forward as a nation. And so part of that was the truth and reconciliation. Get into the deeper issues, get into the issues that had been overlooked, get into the issues where terrible things had been done, but the country needed to heal in order to go forward. So there are some places up and down the country, and dare say even here in Luton, where there needs to be that healing within the community.
Yeah, and it's important to acknowledge that struggle,
Yes.
and make sure people are heard. Ruth, in terms of the situation, what have been your key learnings about it, and what have you taken on board?
I think, before I go into my key learnings, I feel really sad for the emergency services, so police officers or the police in general.
We also want to recognise the brilliance of the police and
Yes.
their bravery within this situation, and we want to make sure, because police usually get a bad name,
Yeah.
and we want to take this moment to recognise the
Absolutely.
bravery they've had within the country to help and serve and protect the public.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I've seen so many videos of police cars being destroyed or police officers being hit and everything, and it's very sad. I mean, first of all, on a daily basis, policing, for example, because we work with the police quite a lot, so I see that it's quite hard on a daily basis, and then adding on to that, where sometimes they're understaffed and everything, and all of that stress, it's just really sad. And then you got the shops as well that people are looting, breaking into, and you have to think about the shop owner coming back. Their things are probably gone. Thank God some of them the people were not able to break into, because I saw this one video where so many people were trying to break the glass, but no one got into. So everyone was wondering, where did you get your glass from? But thank God some people, their shops are fine. But other than that, I think the key learnings are that, just like you said, we need to come together, because there are so many issues that are not being addressed.
Yes.
Since this chaos is sparkling, it can't just be out of thin air. There has to be fire. Where there's smoke, there's fire.
Mm-hmm.
So that issue needs to be addressed. But then again, it needs to be done respectfully, so that everyone feels included and listened to.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I think on that note, we can end the show. And it's been such a brilliant show. Any final thoughts, any final words?
I think there's hope. There is hope that as we go into the future, we hold on to the hope. That we, as I said, as a town, we have a 2040 vision. We hold on to that hope. And we hold on to a hope for a better UK, where everyone is valued and appreciated, and everyone is able to contribute to the development of our nation.
Wow, that was the perfect way to end the show. But it's definitely important for our listeners out there to hold on to hope, because at the most difficult situations, it's something that will get us through hard times.
Yeah.
So we have been your hosts, Manveer
And Ruth.
and thank you for our lovely guest, Dr. Trevor.
Thank you very much. Pleasure.
And this has been Youthology Show on AUK Radio from 6 p.m. till 7 p.m. every 2 weeks on Wednesday. So our next show will be on the 11th of September. Am I right? No, sorry about that. The 28th of August.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for that. This show has been brought to you by Attentive Social Enterprise, and we will see you later.
Bye.